Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and TechAdvice.Life video. I'm joined today by Nigel Lee. He's the AP Director for Storage at Lenovo ISG, the Infrastructure Solutions Group. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Great to have you, and thank you for taking the time. Now, Nigel, most people watching would be well aware of Lenovo's range of business and consumer PCs, servers, and more, including the legendary ThinkPad line and even the new Motorola ThinkPad phones. But can you please give us a quick recap on everything else that Lenovo does, which clearly includes the ISG division that you're part of?
Sure, Alex. So Lenovo's mission is to bring smarter technology for all, and that's everything from the pocket to the cloud. So you mentioned before that, we do a lot of devices that consumers are familiar with, and that's absolutely true. We have a pedigree of taking technology and becoming number one. And we've done that over many decades. We're actually quite large now. We're about a $70 billion organization. We're listed on 2 stock markets, and we have a 3S strategy. So it's all about having smarter Internet of Things, starts having smarter infrastructure and smarter verticals. Our whole organization revolves around that as well. So we have 3 distinct organizations. The first one is the IDG group, which specializes in all those devices that you spoke about before. We have a SSG group, which is our services and solutions group, that specializes on everything from post-warranty through to advanced consulting and also architecture work. And then we have an infrastructure solutions group, which I'm part of, that focuses on world-class servers, data management, and networking that's actually powering a lot of data centers around the world. So the ISG group actually is one of the fastest growing and most profitable businesses that we have at Lenovo. And I'm really proud to be part of it. Actually, very, very slowly over a number of years, we've won a number of different awards. The industry, the media is finally starting to take notice of this. But we've gone from nowhere to being recognized as the #1 supercomputing vendor in the world, with over 162 deployments worldwide. We have gone from nowhere to basically being recognized by IDC. I'm sure you know, who has independently verified that we have #1 market share for entry storage worldwide. And that's true for Asia Pacific as well. We've got countless awards and innovations. So something that we've been building. We've got a really robust enterprise portfolio that's servicing customers all throughout the region.
Well, very impressive stuff. And yes, I've seen Lenovo's growth over the years. And of course, when it purchased the IBM ThinkPad line many years ago now, that turbocharged into everything that we see today. And yeah, incredible stuff. Now, we're finally in the post-pandemic era, but the world of business is still dealing with a staff and skills shortage, and the world of IT is no different. So before we go into further detail, what is the broad picture that we're looking at for technology companies today dealing with this issue?
I'm sure, like yourself, I'm really glad we passed the pandemic, but it has left a long tail of challenges, and a lot of it revolves around manpower. In fact, the most common conversation I have with CIOs is, Nigel, I need help. I can't find the right type of skills I need to keep powering my organization. And these CIOs, they have a tough time because they've gone from running operations, seeing as a cost center, to running a business that should be driving revenue for their companies. And so there's this tussle between the business leaders saying, hey, you need to keep innovating and generating more digital revenue for me. At the same time, they can't find any people. And so Lenovo, I just recently commissioned an IDC survey that surveyed a bunch of CIOs across Asia Pacific, large sampling from Australia as well. And I can tell you 33% of CIOs across Asia Pacific, they are saying that lack of manpower, lack of IT skills is the #1 issue. In ANZ, it's actually 36%, so it's just a little bit higher. So what are they doing? Well, they're doing a lot to try to upskill their internal organization, but at the same time, they're looking at different technologies they can deploy, trying to simplify the complexity of what they have to support their businesses so they can have their highly skilled staff go work on more valuable work for them in their businesses.
Absolutely. Well, there's obviously a clear need for IT decision makers to future-proof their businesses through education, IT upskilling, and modernizing current systems. So what is the role of technology companies, including Lenovo, in enhancing the education that's got to keep those staff with you? Because staff retention is such an important part, not just looking for people, but looking after the people you've already got.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the beauties about working with a company with such a broad portfolio is I've seen us in action when it comes to kind of education and up-leveling organizations. So when the pandemic happened, you'd be surprised at how many schools were offline. We had to help them go online. We had to help them with devices, get on video conferences so that the schooling system itself can continue to operate. And we all know it's not ideal, but it was better than absolutely nothing. Right. On the kind of the enterprise side of the businesses, when we're talking to universities and research organizations that are doing a lot of high performance computing and processing, our technologies such as our compute is using to fast track a lot of the analysis that they're doing right now. So, we're kind of helping both on the enterprise side with research and development, and also down at the consumer level.
So how can companies help employees and job seekers to upskill based on current market needs?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here. The first thing is that companies, to retain their staff, they really need to put in place programs to develop their skills, right? And so quite often we try to hire the best to bring them into their organization so they can help grow the business. We forget that they're there not just to contribute, but to develop and learn as well. And so putting together a framework of training of professional skills, that's the easy one. So, more advanced programming skills. If you're a project manager, maybe you want to be a PMI expert, and so on and so forth. It could be agile, it could be cloud skills. But there's also soft skills that you should be investing in as well. People need to learn how to communicate, how to speak. What you and I are doing right now is by all means not natural. It takes a little bit of practice, right? And so this is something that people should be investing in. The other area that organizations should be doing is making sure that if there's any kind of real simple, kind of less impactful work that is repeatable, probably you want to try to automate as much of that as possible, so you can elevate the staff that you have already in your organization to do other things, to do more valuable, higher value work for you.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of talk about AI and ChatGPT and those sort of things. I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but what can businesses prioritize amid the shortage of talents that we're seeing?
Well, a couple of things here. The first thing is you want to retain your top talent, right? And so a lot of what I talked about before in terms of the kind of hard skills you want to put in place, but also you want to make sure that the work that they're doing, they can easily associate to the success of business. Quite often people come into a company and they're kind of told to do a job, but they have absolutely no idea how to impact a customer or top line revenue. And so as a business leader, you need to try to connect that for your people and show them what they're doing is really appreciated. Feedback is something that doesn't happen very much in organization as well. I think we all try, but generally reaching in and saying, hey, Sarah, I've seen what you do on a day-to-day basis. I really appreciate it. Because of your efforts, one of my customers was exceptionally happy. They decided to, increase the level of purchases they have with our organization. That's important. That feedback loop. But equally as important, say, not only do I recognize it, I have a promotion path for you. This is what I'm thinking based on where you are right now and what you've been telling me. How can I help you develop your skills in such a way that not only do you feel like you're contributing internally, but you're developing professionally as well? And again, there's still so many simple, repetitive jobs that are happening in even modern kind of digitized environments that really should be given to kind of AI tools or used by some sort of automation. I think organizations should be thinking about doing that.
Yeah, I know I've covered a lot of different companies doing robotic process automation over the past few years. That's become quite a booming area, especially when those systems are dealing with legacy systems that are, still keyboard and, command keys and very sort of primitive stuff. It's incredible how much some of that stuff's still there. I remember going into an office work some years ago, or a Bunnings, one of the two, and they were still using a DOS window to do various things, because clearly it was easier than having to deal with all the latest technologies. I think that's all virtualized now. But what you were talking about just then is also an indication that the management needs to make sure that they've brushed up on all their leadership skills, because clearly that's an important part of it. I mean, people do want to feel as though They are doing meaningful work that makes a real difference to the bottom line, but it also makes a real difference to customers because, nobody wants to be doing work that's perceived as meaningless. Not that any company wants to be giving that impression, but I mean, it's just, in this era where people have been stuck behind screens for a while, we sort of got to bring that human element back. And it's part of what you've been talking about. And in fact, what do you say Australia's top priorities are from an APAC perspective based on Lenovo ISG's Data Mgmt Playbook?
Yeah, so Alex, the playbook that we commissioned with IDC just actually published this week. It's a very interesting finding. So we actually surveyed about 554 CIOs across the region, very large representation from ANZ as well. And the top 3 business priorities, it's actually changed quite a lot. Historically, the last couple of years, the number 1 priority was saving costs. Guess what? It's not even the top 3 positions anymore. The number 1 priority for CIOs today is accelerating revenue and profit. Right? The second one, which jumped an amazing 7 spots, was doing things more sustainable, right? And I think that really resonates in the market like Australia and New Zealand. And the third one really was about increasing the business's agility, right? And so giving them more options just in case there's another shock that comes, they need to pivot and change. So these are the top APAC business priorities. In ANZ, it was a little bit different. The number 1 priority was actually sustainability. Right. The number 2 was enhancing the customer experience, and the number 3 was help me make more money. Right. And so ANZ, the sustainability really stands out for the ANZ market. And I think if you look at the drivers for sustainability in Australia, it really was reducing waste. Right. And I kind of resonates a little bit. As you can probably tell from my accent, I grew up in Australia, but I spent the last 20 years up in Asia working with customers up here. When I was growing up in Australia, even then there was a big focus on recycling and reusing. And that has absolutely moved from, I guess, the personal life in the consumer world. The next thing that they were talking about is really about preparing for regulation and compliance that will potentially be enforced into the companies. A lot of companies, so the governments haven't mandated a lot right now, but there are a lot of organizations that do this as part of the ESG initiatives. And the last one is optimization or efficiencies. With what I got right now, how do I run better? How do I reduce my footprints? These are the top 3 drivers in ANZ.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that report is publicly available, I'll make sure to include a link to it in the article that accompanies this video, because I'm sure people will want to have a look at the rest of the results. But also, yeah. Now, you mentioned before also about AI and machine learning and chatbots, and we talked about robotic process automation, and of course we're now immersed in a world of ever smarter AI and ML technologies. So how are these dramatic changes and improvements changing the game for everyone, sort of, I guess, beyond some of those repetitive tasks that have been already looked after by robotic process automation? And and be this for CIOs, CISOs who have got all the security concerns, employees and customers. I mean, just very quickly, we had Samsung banning its employees from using ChatGPT because they uploaded unreleased information into ChatGPT, and also they uploaded the notes from meetings to get like a breakdown. And then there's also the news that Microsoft is going to be offering customers like a private version of ChatGPT on its Azure servers, so that company information can stay within the company, so that AI is sort of working as much as possible for the company, and it's not leaking information that could inadvertently be going to competitors.
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely is. What I'd say about AI is, first of all, it's been around for a long time, but it's been consumerized. It's becoming more generally available and more understandable for, let's say, the individual that isn't a technical expert. For example, there have been AI robots that have been monitoring the process of manufacturing potato chips, for many years. As they're baking the potato chips, the one thing you don't want in your packet of chips when you open up is the green chip, right? And so there have been cameras that have been monitoring these production ways of potato chips. And if it spots the green one, there's a jet of air that gets blown, and that green potato chip doesn't make it into your chip bag, right? And there are all these kind of metrics and counters that have been used to find out what the what the rates of good chips are versus bad chips, and all of this technology kind of has been there, we have been benefiting from that for a long time now. But as it pertains to kind of what's happening these days with ChatGPT and CIOs and CISOs and employees and customers, well, if I think about it from a CIO perspective, the first thing is they are definitely going to want to deploy more of this AI in their environment to help them understand what they can do better to generate more revenue, right? Most large organizations actually have pools and pools of data which are siloed, potentially not connected. Now you're able to implement different types of AI to get intelligence out of that to hopefully increase your customers' experience. The other thing about the CIOs is that they're definitely going to have to ramp up their capabilities in this space. It's a new space that's very niche. We've already talked about a staff shortage. So they need to go find this talent or develop it internally. And for the CIOs, they're going to also have to develop a governance and a data privacy framework, right? So these AI algorithms will not only be able to help access lots of different disparate information to get a better outcome for a customer, but it's going to generate certain decisions and potentially ship things to customers or present an offer to a customer proactively. And you want to make sure that you have certain guidelines and frameworks around what you actually push out there as well. So these are all new things that the CIOs will probably want to put in place that don't have right now. I'm going to have to staff up for and get ready for. The CISOs, they will most likely use AI to kind of optimize their jobs already. CISO's job is to put together what I'd say increasing ring fences of security to make sure their environment's safe and secure and protected. And if there is an intrusion, they kind of shut it down quickly. With AI, you now have the ability to not wait for an incident to happen and do a recovery, but you can do things like behavior detection recognition. So if all of a sudden a user in your organization behaves radically differently, you can set profiles through AI to say, hey, that's a bit unusual. Why are they opening and closing dozens of files? Because normally they only access this folder once a month, right? And you can automatically isolate that user before they do any damage. The other thing they'll do is probably use AI for intrusion detection, kind of penetration testing, right? And I imagine they're also going to have to staff up with people that know how to use these technologies as well. For employees, there's, like we mentioned about the mundane work, there's still a lot of organizations which are doing things like, I don't know, manual expenses. You get your receipt, you got to take a photocopy of it, fill in a spreadsheet, send a bit of paper to your finance department for them to approve. Why can't I just take a photo of it and just get it submitted automatically and have the money hit my bank, my paycheck? For the consumers, I just want a better experience. One of the projects that we're actually actively working on right now is in an industry that's been around for a long time, that we all probably have used at some point, which is kind of one of these takeaway drive-thrus, right? What's the most annoying thing about that experience? Well, it's the queuing and it's the ordering process. So what some of the companies are doing right now is they're combining kind of video cameras with your historical purchases. So it knows when you're coming into that drive-through on a Monday night by yourself at 8 p.m., it's most likely just going to be in an order for yourself because you work late that night. And it's going to pre-populate your order, and if it makes sense, it's going to say you can go to the front of the queue. We're ready. Your order will be ready by the time you get there. If you turn up on a Saturday, you got a car full of kids, potentially you're ordering a lot of burgers for the soccer team. And by the way, the video surveillance and the AI also has the ability to say, okay, you know what? There's a crack in his windscreen, or the tread on the tire is actually a little bit low. Why don't I just send him a coupon? I'm going to send him a text message and say, hey, you can get your windscreen repaired at Windows O'Brien for 20% off, right? And so there's a lot of this, which I think would really dramatically increase, the customer's experience and really drive up loyalty.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are some of the real world examples of where that sort of the ability to look at those things through AI. I mean, some people obviously will still say, "Oh, that's too much." But the thing is, this is where it's all going. And if you can actually get useful offers, even if you don't take up the Brian Glass offer for the upgrade of your or the replacement of your window crack, I mean, you'll be told you've got one. You may not be aware. I've had the NRMA guys come and all of a sudden they're having a look at the glass. I didn't ask them about that, but they're checking it to see whether they have any cracks because, well, they're trying to do the same thing, but they're just using a human to do that rather than an AI scanner. So, I mean, in some sense, it's already happening. The more of these positive scenarios, the better, is all I can say, really.
Absolutely.
Now, you also did talk about Lenovo's work with educational institutions before, during the pandemic, having to go and help them. But, even before the pandemic, you were already working closely with educational institutions to simplify their complex IT environments. So what is your message to schools and educational institutions beyond what you did for them during the pandemic and beyond what you did for them before?
One of the things I'd say is that you really want to try to embrace technology, right, and bring more of that into your curriculum. There's a lot of fundamental STEM-based kind of programs that you have to go through, math, science, English, absolutely. But because of the advancement of technology, there's still a big gap between the knowledge of the average student that exits, for example, high school through college, that goes into university, right? And so the earlier you bring in technology into the development of the students, the children, I think the better, right? Lenovo actually does do a lot of proactive work with educational institutions. We donate laptops, we help with schooling programs. We're actually right now, and it's a bit of a teaser here, but we're actually developing an AI program, right, which is an incubator program, which is going to provide both mentorship, funding, and investments for AI startups, right? And so, this we're moving forwards to become a leader in this space as well, not just helping traditional educational organizations, but also in a completely different field of AI startups that is creating a whole new segment.
Yeah. Well, I've also heard of how AI can be providing each child a very customized learning program just for them. So I'm sure some of the AI startups that you'll eventually be funding will probably want to work in that space. But there's, the applications for AI are effectively endless. I mean, there's the, new AI tools appearing. I see them talked about in various articles or on Twitter every day, every week. There's these articles, the top 100 AI tools, and it reminds me of back before Google, we had all these different search engines: Dogpile, Hotdog, Alta Vista, Smart Look. I mean, there were so many of them, and it was a new search engine a week sort of thing, and then it sort of consolidated. And I think eventually something similar will have to happen with AI, but it's still probably a few years away yet. So that's good news to hear that you're going to be funding some of that AI startup space, because I also read that this year, especially, the startup funding has actually decreased a lot in the US because of all the different waves of inflation and problems in the startup space. So that will no doubt be very appreciated and welcome. And you'll probably get people knocking on your door proactively now that you've given this sneak peek. They'll say, "Hey, we've got something that we want you to have a look at." Now, you're also, not just to finish with education just yet, you're also taking part in the Indigenous Reading Project, or IRP. So just what's the short version of how you're helping with this program?
Oh, fair. Sure. So there's a really big literacy gap between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities in Australia. And I'm actually the beneficiary of an individual that went through the public school system in Australia. So this is really close to my heart. I know I would not be the person I am today if I didn't benefit from that. And there's a lot of communities that haven't been able to benefit from it because there simply just isn't any access, right? And so I think we've been investing in this since 2020, right? And so we help with both manpower, people, and products to make sure that we help try to close that gap. And that's one of the things that we do that's different here. Lenovo really does try to give back to the communities in which it operates in, right? And so, we have programs where we actually pay our employees to do charity every single year, right? We have certain charities that we always invest in for that local community, which we know will benefit the level of education and also move forward the technology and innovation for that market. The other thing that we also do internally is we match donations. So if employees go and decide they want to donate to a certain cause, let's say the conflict that we're seeing in Eastern Europe right now, Lenovo will match dollar for dollar. And so giving back, looking around and helping the community is something that is dear to my heart, and that's one of the another reasons why I love working where I work.
Yeah, well, I know that on the Motorola side of things, with Motorola being a Lenovo company for the smartphones, they've just announced the smartphones that have an option to be speaking, and displaying the language in Maori. So, your entire organization is obviously working in this regard, I'm sure, on a global basis. So it's good to see companies giving back, and it's just something that that whole CSR, corporate social responsibility, has never gone away. In fact, the need for it is greater than ever. So congratulations on that. Now, we also touched briefly, I mean, before we finish, on some questions about the future and some questions I want to ask about you, but we touched on modernizing current systems before, which is another way of saying digital transformation, something that has been the big buzzword of sort of the last decade, and into now. People are still working with these manual processes that people are still undergoing digital transformation, and some of these I like to point out were transformations they embarked on several years ago, and whether they finish them or not, technology has moved on. They have to sort of transform again to keep up with the times. So how else are Lenovo solutions bridging the gap and providing support for organizations looking to modernize and adapt their businesses?
Thank you. It's a very deep and complicated question you've got there, but let me see if I can try to simplify it. Australia and New Zealand market is known to be one of the early adopters of the cutting edge technologies, which is brilliant. But it's also a very large market where you have a diverse set of customers. And so you've got one set of customers which would probably implement what I'd say really traditional solutions, maybe silo-based solutions to service an email workload or a web-based workload. And they're quite happy doing that. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have born in the cloud companies that have done everything in the public cloud. What's happening right now is that the CIO and the companies are trying to get more digitized and more modern. And I think there's a meeting in the middle. Right, and so if you look at the paper that we just published, the number one desire of CIOs, both in Australia and around Asia Pacific, is to implement what they call a unified data management fabric, right? And which is the best of both worlds. If you have an application that needs a certain level of isolation to be on-prem, you can get that. If there are certain components of that workload or data set that is better served to be able to burst in the cloud, there's connectivity to go and do that as well. So I guess more modern data management frameworks that give you that agility or flexibility I talked about before, that's important. Because of the shortage of IT skills in Australia, right? You also want to simplify the environment. And there, historically, you'd have a 3-tier architecture. What is that? So you'd have the application, then you'd have the servers, you'd have the networking and the compute. And in each one of those layers, you have a specialist. You have somebody who's the database specialist, somebody who's the server specialist, someone's the networking and storage. And that's just too much, right? There are more modern technologies like software-defined infrastructure or hyper-converged infrastructure that can kind of bring all that together, try to simplify it in a virtualized environment that people are implementing as well. So, I'm really blessed because at Lenovo, our data management portfolio is quite broad. We actually have the widest best-of-breed data management portfolio in the industry. So it doesn't matter where you are on this kind of modernization journey. We can help you either, update and refresh what you have today. If it's one of those kind of really focused, siloed environments, we could help you leapfrog all the way to public cloud if you want, or we can meet you in the middle with a really agile kind of unified data management platform.
Now, one of the questions I always like to ask is, if you were to sort of look into the crystal ball a bit, how do you see Lenovo ISG evolving over the next couple of years?
A great question. So absolutely expect the business to continue to grow and to continue to be a major contributor to the future success of Lenovo. I'm going to say that we are definitely investing and looking into different partnerships that are going to help accelerate and advance AI initiatives for your customers and mine. The other area I'm going to say is that we actually have a broad reach of partners, right, in the ecosystems. And they are only just starting to hear about what we do in the enterprise space. So we are investing a lot of time and money to make sure that these partners understand what we can offer on the ISG side as well. So these are kind of 2 or 3 areas which you should see to expect from ISG.
And one of the other questions I always like to ask is if you could please share a memory of your first computer.
Oh, oh my gosh. I remember when I saw my first computer, definitely at school. It was an amazing TV-looking device with lots of keys. The first one I ever got at home, and it was a very humble household, but the first computer I ever got at home was a Macintosh 128. It was like, I think you had this weird thing with a cable called a mouse and a keyboard. And, my father used it for, accounting, statistics and analytics. But what did I use it for? It was Carmen San Diego.
Of course. Yeah. Oh boy, those were the days, yeah. And of course, the kids of today, I mean, if they look back at those old green screen machines that weren't color, they're slow, weren't connected to the internet. I mean, it's like those videos I've seen on the internet where the kid's looking at a tape and it's like, what's that? It only holds 1 hour. You got to turn it around. I mean, yes, I think sometimes, I mean, there probably should be some Twilight Zone show where they transport kids back in time for a day just to see if they can live in the world that we grew up in. Funny stuff. And just another sort of personal question, what's a day in the life like for you as the AP, director of storage? What do you sort of do? And I mean, just at a high level.
Really high level. Look, I have a young family, so it usually starts very early, kind of like everybody else, trying to get the kids to school. Normally done very early, about 7. I start my day, professional day there, and it always starts with what happened overnight. What happened in the business world, what the Fed do with interest rates, what's the RBA likely to do in Australia today, and then what happened in the world of technology. Any large announcements? How is the market responding to our announcements, right? And are there responses that are required there? It is then followed up by very quick calls with my own team. And the best part of my day always is talking to customers and partners who are working on real world problems. Now it's, Nigel, I'm stuck. I've got this legacy database or ERP solution. It's too slow. It's not nimble enough. I can't access it through mobile. What can you guys help me do with this? And it's really understanding their problems, pairing it up with our solutions. That's really the highlight of my day. It always ends, of course, with some sort of internal business operation call. And hopefully, the afternoon or the end of most of my days, I get to spend a little bit of time with new technologies. Right. And so one of the announcements that we have made recently, I think it was just in the last month, is our partnership with a new company called Weka.io. There's an unaddressed space in the high performance computing market, which is for parallel file systems. Now, we all know about you need teraflops of compute to do some of this analysis, but quite often the bottleneck is actually a file system. And there are lots of different file systems out there, but to do sequential, really fast parallel file systems, that has been a segment which I think has been underaddressed. Weka.io is a brand new partner of ours. We're about to launch this all throughout Asia Pacific. We're really excited about that space. So that's a day in the life of what Nigel does.
Very good. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear customer pain points. And I mean, those are opportunities for companies like yourselves to go, well, how can we solve that? And then that's something that you can apply to other customers as well. And, I always like to sort of say that your customers are your best R&D division. And I've sort of forgot to ask that question, but you brought it up, which is really cool.
My team knows this. Spend the majority of your time with the customers, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So my second last question is to ask if you could please share some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
Wow. I have been very blessed. I've been very blessed in the fact that I've had a lot of good mentors and managers in the past. I've had a few where I've learned things of which I've decided that's what I should not do. They can be useful as well. But I think if I was to put it together, if there are maybe 2 or 3 things, especially for people who are entering the workforce for the first time. When you're first entering the workforce, you really want to put in the hours. But whatever industry you're in, whatever you're doing, spend the extra hours to become not just an expert, but a master in that space. Be known in your company that says, when I have a question or a comment or challenge in this area, I go to this person. And it's worth the time and effort, particularly when you're just starting, right? If there's an extra project or a social event that you get to participate in, put your hand up and learn that. A growth mindset is really important. If you combine that with positive attitude, right? The business world is fun. It can be hard. Life can be brutal. Sometimes things just don't work out your way, right? The one thing you can control, right? You can't control so many things, but the one thing you can control is your attitude. So you combine a mastery in somewhere with a positive attitude, you're going to get known as a really good person to get to know. The last thing is, as you begin to, see more success, don't forget to look around and help other people, acknowledge people for them helping you to get to where you are, right? That's really important. So I'd say, become a master of something, be humble, thank folks along the way, and also have a positive attitude. These three things have tended to work really well for me.
Great advice. Yeah, I was just thinking, had the vision. I've heard of where people, so you've heard that terminology where someone has made it and they've pulled the ladder up behind them, so that other people can't. And it's like, you don't want to do that. You want to help people up the ladder because, we're meant to be caring and sharing and helping everybody. We're all brothers and sisters, ultimately, whatever race we are on the planet. We're all from the same planet Earth. So, yeah, I think it's like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. They said, be kind. If more people were kind, this would be a utopia. So I think as a species, we have a lot to learn, but it definitely sounds like you're on the right path there. So Nigel, what is your final message to the viewers and the readers and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, first of all, a big thank you for listening in and speaking to us. As you're kind of working through your own challenges, we understand that the choices that you have, the complexities you have in your business and everyday life, it's hard. You have so many more choices today than we did 20 years ago. It comes to selecting a vendor or a product or a solution. We get that. And that's why we spend all of our time trying to make sure that we piece together the best of breed solutions for you. Now, in your purchasing and partnering decision-making, quite often it comes down to who gives me the best product and solution set. I'm going to ask you to challenge that just a little bit here. I want you to also think about your own personal and corporate values. And does that align with the values of the vendor you're potentially going to partner with? All right. So I talked a little bit about, and you mentioned it, about how Lenovo is contributing to communities. I talked about thanking people and lifting them up as well. But one of the other reasons, and I didn't mention it on so far, is that Lenovo really cares about the world and sustainability. In fact, we are one of the very few vendors that signed up to be carbon net zero by 2050. And it's actually science-based, it's documented, and it's actually audited by an independent body. So we actually have in place a lot of initiatives, everything from carbon offsets to, rebuying and recycling, reusing things, in an environmentally friendly way. So you want to make sure that the company you're doing business with also shares similar values. And I think if you go to the effort of not just picking the right solutions and products, plus partnering with the right corporations, then you're going to have a really nice pairing. But listen, I really want to thank you for your time. Hopefully this message resonates with, your audience. And just like you said before, you can find me online. All my contact details are on LinkedIn, right? My mobile telephone number, my email address. Go ahead and reach out.
Well, Nigel Lee, AP Director of Storage at Lenovo ISG, the Infrastructure Solutions Group. Thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed speaking with you as well. Best of luck for the future. And I do hope we can talk again. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alex. Really enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.